Oops. Now how am I gonna fix this? Nobody's perfect, except for maybe a few painters I can name. But for the rest of us, we're gonna make mistakes. In fact, I made quite a few on this guy, really bad ones even. But as I was trying to remember what colors I used in order to fix those mistakes, I thought to myself, there has to be a better way. So that's what this video is about. Creative ways to fix mistakes on our miniatures. Now when I say mistakes, I don't mean something small like getting a bit of one color onto another when trying to outline. Those are easy enough to fix as the paints are already right there on your palette to restart if you need to, or if you're quick enough, can be removed via water or just a bit of airbrush cleaner. No, the mistakes I mean are the three that I've done here. First is I got a huge streak of brown across one of his muscles, and since I was painting something else at the time, didn't catch it before it dried. Same goes for this green on his thumb. That just happened when I went to go wash my brush while painting something else. And the paint tore a bit on his knuckle here, and I can't wash away what's not there to begin with. So these are what I'm going to have to creatively try and fix. Luckily, when I messed up by getting the long brown stripe on his arm, I did so in a nice straight line, which means I can actually build off of it to create a tattoo. Finding a similar brown, I'll start by filling in the pattern. If I look at the rest of the runes around him in the stone, they have some straight lines made into claw marks almost, so I'll go with something like that, filling in the one that's here so it has a thicker end, then starting a new smaller one off to the side. I'm thinking I'll go with a marked triangle, so do something in between them too. A hook feels about right. So with that, my accident becomes the start of a tattoo, though now it needs some refining. I'm going to add a bit of red oxide to the mix of brown since I want to layer this up to an orange. I'll be using my fine brush to carefully recover all of the rune, leaving only a few of the outer brown fringes. The brown was a little dark, but to be fair, it's not like I chose the starting color. It chose me, but I think going towards an orange will give me a nice contrast to the blue skin, and essentially showcase it in a way where only I know that it wasn't supposed to be there. Now I want to start to follow the curve and highlight of the muscle itself a bit, adding a bit more red oxide but also a bit of yellow oxide. When I do this layer, I want to pull the paint towards the center of the muscle and leave the deeper parts darker, much like how the blue is painted underneath, which I can use as a bit of a guide. With a bit more yellow added, I have a pretty bright final highlight. This one just gets applied pretty thinly towards the rounded points of the muscle, giving me a nice gradient for the tattoo that follows the light of the muscle. However, that's not everything I can do. When it comes to tattoos, if left on top of the skin like this, they look more like war paint than something under the skin, but there's a simple solution to get the effect. On the palette, I mix a light blue again, close to what my skin color was, and add some medium to thin it out. From here, you could use a brush damp with the mix to layer up a thin glaze layer. However, I'm a bit more lazy and/or technical and use my airbrush instead, just gently building up those thin layers until I think it looks exactly right for what a tattoo should. So there we go, an errant swipe of stray paint over some skin and muscle, fixed. For the leather glove where the material of the model itself sticks out, the first step is going to be getting it covered with some primer. I use a black airbrush primer usually, so just a bit of that on the palette. Then using the tip of my brush, I just let a bead of it sink into the hole left by the torn paint, then wait. I want to let this dry fully before trying anything else. Since it actually ripped paint away, I'd have to layer the paints up exactly like I did last time in order to fix the difference in elevation left by a hole in the paint layer. But this is where instead I can get creative. If there's now physically a hole, I can paint it like a hole in the glove. So using some of the blue and a tiny bit of the black, I make a base color for the interior of the opening, his skin that would be showing through, and once again, just dot a tiny layer onto it, but pulling it towards the bottom of the dot so that the upper rim stays a bit black. I'll do one more layer with some of that blue and just a tiny bit of white to get his skin tone. This gets dotted at the very center of this hole, trying my steady best to never get it near the sides. Now that I've got myself some underskin, I need to texture around it and make it look more like wear and tear. Starting with the burnt sienna base that I used, I add a tiny bit of white to it, just enough to make it a bit lighter. Then, using a very fine brush, stipple and scratch around the rim of the opening to give it a bit of a rough texture, trying to keep the lines as thin as possible. With a little more added white to the mix, once again I can use that really thin brush to give the bottom edge of the opening a line highlight, but then also a few touches and lines off of it to highlight that texture just a little bit more as well. And with that, I've gone from a hole in the paint to a hole in the glove. Fixed. I'm not really sure how the green even got on his thumb, but all I can say is don't put unfinished minis in the path of your paint water. But now that it's there, what can I do to fix it? Since I'm already in for a nickel, might as well go in for the toonie. Getting some green on my palette and mixing in just a tiny bit of yellow oxide, I'm going to give all his fingers a base coat of this green, because the way he's got his hand lifted seems like he's casting a spell anyway, so why not make it a reality? I'm going to make his fingers glow. Just in this case, the color was chosen for me. Adding a little more yellow to the phthalo green to get it slightly lighter, I'm going to layer with some stippling, at least on his fingertips, and just create some line layering for the knuckles, since they're mostly lines anyway. I'm going to be trying to center the glow from his fingertips, and because they're rounded, I think stippling will look best. Continuing to add the yellow, I don't actually mind if this becomes more yellow than green, since I will be glazing over top later, which would bring this back to a green if needed. I just need it bright enough for now to be even considered a glow. Layering this up again, mostly in the center of the fingers. One more time, but this time pure yellow with a dab of the green and a bit of white. This gets stippled right onto the center of the fingertips, giving me my glow point. Like I did with the tattoo, I want to feather out the green along the hand some, so do a mix of green, yellow, some white, and a medium. This can be applied by brush in thin layers, but I'm going with my airbrush again to make it really even. I'll start by spraying over the fingers, but tilt the model side to side to let the spray hit the sides as well, and I let the spray catch the middle of the palm as well, as the glow would shift its hue a little bit. Which is also why I saved this mistake for last, so the rest of the hand was done before this step. Lastly, just to make sure the fingertips are the brightest point still, I add more of the white to the green and yellow mix and stipple the centers of the fingers again, making sure each of them has the glowing highlight point. And finally, I've gone from silly mistake to spectacular magic. Green thumb, fixed. This is a model I've been taking my time working on between videos. Since he's a warlock, the leader of the army, I wanted to do a good job, but it was never my intention to make a video out of him. That was, until I saw what I had done to him while he was just sitting there on my desk. Some of the fixes could have been things I added normally, like tattoos and glows, but making the mistakes is what pushed me in those directions. Which means they weren't mistakes at all, but happy little accidents. Please subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this one, or just other fun things to do with painting miniatures. And until next time, enjoy your own painting journey.